What an amazing last 400 meters for California. As can they actually have some contact here with Stanford? And I do believe that they're able to push their bow a little bit further into Stanford's lead. Stanford crossing over first. It is California in second. And then the Huskies. What a great close race here by these West Coast rivals. Backed by open water, it's going to be Rutgers. Rutgers holding off the Wolverines of Michigan. What a great race here in this first varsity 8. And just a preview of what's to come for the rest of this spring. It's, wow, I'm blown away.
Well, that was a turnaround. I think California maybe just surprised a few people, and that's going to be heartbreak. That's going to be a hard one for the Washington Huskies. You know, such a hard-fought battle, maybe focusing almost a little too much on Stanford maybe.
But look at how close that is. Look at how close that is. 6:08 for Stanford. But between California and Washington, it's, you know, this is close. 6:12.2, Washington 6:13.6. And then back to Rutgers in fourth, 6:23.2, and then Michigan 6:26.7.
Yes, interesting. So some very quick times from our varsity 8s. Not an event record for Stanford, sadly. I'm so sorry,
We expect records every time they come down the race course.
However, what I will give them is they are still the only team to have posted any times under 6:10 in the history of the event. So they've done it a couple of times over their appearances here at the Big 10 Invite. Still the only team to have done it. And they've done it again here in 2026. So hats off to Stanford. You got to give it to them. That's some quick speed from the Cardinal. And we have almost no time to keep thinking about that race because we are underway in our next round of racing featuring all new teams here, including Indiana, Oregon State, Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State.
And I'll say, you know, just on the note in terms of times, you know, it's all relative. Every body of water is different. Every event is different. But, you know, what we know is that the bar has been raised. You know, the level of athleticism is just incrementally higher, you know. So when Megan and I talk about those times, it's just because that bar is continually higher and the standard has been pushed. So it's just a metric that is really interesting to look at. All right, so as they come down the course, we've got a good mix of competitors here. That this is a different mix than we had yesterday in this flight. So this is the second varsity 4, and we've got a good mix here of Big 10 teams.
Battery level is low.
An ACC
Aircraft will return to the home point in 10 seconds.
Conference champion, that's Oregon State. And right now it is Oregon State that is your early leader. They have about a stern advantage right now over Indiana. And then we'll pan out and see what the rest of the field is doing to get a bead on what the margins are between the other 3 crews.
Yeah, so I know you were really riding on the Oregon State train yesterday.
Yeah.
Had a lot of good things to say about this program emerging and trying to show some really good speed here kind of in the middle of the season. And they're doing just that in this women's second varsity 4. I think this is a great slate of competitors for this team to kind of show that speed and really demonstrate kind of the depth of the program. Really shining through in the second level 4 for the Beavers. They're out to almost a full boat length now over the rest of the field off to their left. It's just this crew on the bottom of our screen now, the crew from Indiana, that's managing to hold on even a little bit to overlap to Oregon State at this early stage.
Yeah, and you know, Oregon State finished 16th at the NCAA championships. Again, this is not an NCAA qualifying boat. However, you know, just in terms of overall finish last year, and you know, every year is different. But Oregon State finished 16th. Indiana was 14th. So as you mentioned, these are really good side-by-side competitions and a good way to gauge that overall improvement. And you're right. You know, I'm very confident that the trajectory that Oregon State is on is very, very positive. So Indiana and Oregon State pushing each other ahead. Next closest competitor is going to come out of lane 5. That's Ohio State. Ohio State also continuing to build that program speed. And we saw yesterday that they've got a really good amount of fitness. And the second half of their 2K is very, very strong. So we're going to look for them to develop even more speed through the third 500 of this 2K. So we'll keep an eye on them out in lane 5. In 4th place, it will be Notre Dame, followed by Michigan State in 5th.
Absolutely. So great demonstration of sort of the effectiveness of a really good base rhythm here in this Oregon State crew, just looking to crack that overlap now on their competitors from Indiana, just staying in their rhythm, staying with their race rate, and using that to just make those incremental steps away from the rest of the field. So they've broken free. It does look like it's open water for the Beavers now, but great contest over on the top of the race course. Ohio State starting to push now and seeing if Notre Dame and Michigan State have an answer to the Buckeyes being in that outside lane. This is such a curious draw to me. Looking at these names and these crews, maybe I would have expected Ohio State to be somewhere more in the middle of this seating, but they find themselves here in this outside lane, lane number 5, which it's interesting. It's great that they have these really tight margins right now with lanes 3 and 4, but I feel like they might want to be just a little bit closer to the action if they're going to be the ones right now that are challenging our second place crew, Indiana. That's a lot of distance across the race course to feel that energy.
Yeah, but I think that when you are a coaching staff and when you're sitting down with your team, you talk about what that means. Hey guys, we're out in lane 5. How do we manage that? You talk to your coxswain. Again, we talked yesterday about what it's like to be a coxswain sitting down in the bow of the boat and what that communication is like. And here we go. There's that really nice side by side view where that what that looks like when you're on the field is really quite different. And now you can see a little bit of how much closer that is between Indiana and Ohio State. We've got Ohio State. Looks like they have overtaken Indiana maybe for that second place position. We'll see if we can get a little bit different of a view. I'm not quite sure that my angle is right. Indiana might still have that second. Yeah, Indiana still has that second place position, but Ohio very much in the hunt. And then right behind them, Notre Dame and then Michigan State, just a little bit off the back, but definitely still within that striking distance. But yeah, with the coxswain out in the bow, having to do that communication from far away, it's really quite challenging. But you can see the coxswain taking a look across and having to be quite clear about, hey guys, we are in the hunt. How do we stay connected to our next closest competitor? And being that communication is so key, and being clear about where they're at on the course. It's difficult, but a savvy coxswain, they've got it in the bag. That you chalk that up to experience. And this is the second varsity 4, so these could be a variety of athletes. These could be athletes in their first year of rowing. These could be athletes that are seniors. We can take a look at the lineups and kind of see where they're at. But this is a great shot here of that Indiana crew, the Hoosiers. Quite tall, great technique here and some nice backsplash.
Well, one of the higher rating crews on the course, Indiana, keeping the rate nice and high. I have them around 37.5, even 38 in the Hoosier boat, just seeing what they can do to just track that speed of Oregon State as the Beavers continue to row away. Competitors from Oregon State just about a beat lower in that kind of 36.5, 37 range. So just a little bit more cooler tempo in that Oregon State boat. There they are. There's your race leaders from Oregon State just trucking along in lane number 2. They've opened up that open water gap now. So in a really nice position to keep eyeballs on the rest of the field. So Ohio State over on the far side looking to see if they can challenge. They've started to wind now. They had kept the rate just a little bit cooler as well, understroking the competitors from Indiana, but now they are really on the move. Are they charging up into that Indiana boat to challenge for that second place position from the far side of the race course? All these crews starting to come back to Oregon State now as we come up to the line. It's going to be awfully close. It may just be a tiny bit of an advantage left for Indiana, but a great surge from Ohio State late in the game. Notre Dame just not able to keep the pace as Ohio State rode away with it, and Michigan State bringing it up in 5th. But great late charge that we saw over on the far side of the course from the Buckeyes. You called it, Adrian, looking for that late stage speed from that program.
Yeah, we've saw some really good performances coming out of the Ohio State 4s this whole weekend. So more to come. And next up, we have our first varsity 4s. All right, we've got some finish times coming up here. Oregon State, good time posted for them in 7:25.2. Indiana in second with a 7:29.3. Ohio State in third with a 730.5, and Notre Dame in fourth with 734.6. In fifth, it will be Michigan State with a time of 7:43.4.